I am Daniel Lucas, and welcome to Book 101 Review. Book 101 is all about the books that I read for the last 40 years, and today I have my special guest. He is the author of A Patience of a Dead Man trilogy, no other than Mr. Michael Clark. So let's talk about your.
Hell on High. It is about. I'll read the little synopsis on the back of the cover. Prepare for adventure as Juliana, a 19-year-old Brazilian, finds herself forced to run from an occult overlord, leaving her sister in peril. Temporarily safe, Juliana works to save money for Vilma's rescue, and along the way meets Patrick, a rich boy mountain climber with friends in high places. Angus Addison wants to see his corporate flag on the summit of Mount Everest, carried there by the first woman in history. But the Himalayas are no joke. Failure could cost both sisters their lives. Juliana weighs the risks and rewards, for even if she raises the cash, she still must figure a way to free Vilma from the same man she ran from, a man to his known to his disciples as the farmer. So what we've got is a Brazilian woman. I chose Brazil because my wife is Brazilian and I've spent quite a bit of time in Brazil. Um, got a Brazilian woman that is forced to flee her country and come to the United States and work and try to save her sister. And then along the way, she realizes she has a talent for climbing and hiking and meets another mountain climber with connections. And they attempt to climb Mount Everest.
Oh, sounds interesting.
Thank you.
Uh, and is it widely distributed, right?
Yes, it is.
Mm,
This one was I went through a publisher called Bridget's Gate Press, and it's available everywhere. But the trilogy was self-published, and that's only available on Amazon.
okay, so let's talk about the second book. The
Dead Woman
sec-
Scorned.
yes.
Yeah. Okay. Well, the trilogy as a whole is called The Patience of a Dead Man, and the first book is called The Patience of a Dead Man, Book One. The second book is called Dead Woman Scorned. And in the first book, you've got a divorced man that buys a house in the country. He's got a pain in the butt ex-wife. He's got two kids, and she lives to make his life difficult. And he realizes that he's not alone in this house, and he's forced to take his kids for visitation and what have you, and not tell them that they're in danger, because if he tells them or his ex-wife, then she won't allow them to come for visitation. So it's kind of he's in denial that they're going to be safe, or will they be safe, and he makes the call to just keep his mouth shut and keep the girls coming over for visitation. Um, so book two, um, obviously it's a trilogy, so book one kind of ends in a little bit of a cliffhanger situation, and the second book goes into detail. Um, One of the supernatural beings is a woman that he sees on his property, and she's wearing like a old fashioned dress, and he sees her in his fields, like way out across the field, and uh, she's haunting him. So in the second book, we there's two parts to it. One, you take a step back and you go into the history of who this woman was, and when she was alive, and how she got to be the way she is. And the second part of it is back to Tim and Holly, the protagonists, dealing with her, and how she's making his life hell.
Yes, sounds interesting, Mr. Clark.
Thank you.
So how did you connect a patience of a dead man to dead woman school?
Well, it's the same story. It's just a continuation. There's a third book as well, and that one's called "Anger Is an Acid: The Patience of a Dead Man," book three. So it's really just I wrote one, and then I was like, I like this character, and how can I make more out of it? The idea being, boy, if somebody wants to make this into a movie, it wouldn't be too much money. There wouldn't be too much in the way of special effects or that kind of a thing, and uh, that would be my dream to see three movies made out of this. And I think that especially the woman in the field whose name is Mildred, um, could be a movie character as strong as some of the ones that you know and love or hate.
Yes,
The infamous
probably.
ones like Jason or Michael or whatever. But it's not a slasher either. This is more. I go for the eerie emotion, the creepy, the scary, the slow burn, the atmospheric kind of a thing, like maybe the Sixth Sense was that kind of a building tension. I like that's my favorite horror emotion.
So the second book, is it more hard to write than the first one?
Um, well, this was my second book, as you know, and I was still obsessed with word count. Like, ooh, I gotta, I want to aim for 100,000 words, which is I've now come to learn is a lot. Today's reader seems to be into novellas and shorter novels. Stephen King would, write 500 pages like nothing. It's 1100 or 1400 or whatever it is. And I was trying to be like him. Um, so was it harder? I did have like a target of say 50,000 words for each of those two parts of the book. One being the big flashback to where Mildred came from, and 50,000 to the continuation of the haunting of Tim and Holly by Mildred. So, but oddly, the second book, I don't know if it was because I was getting better at writing or um, I had an opportunity where my wife went to Brazil before I did, and I had some time alone to just do nothing but write. And so for a couple weeks, I was really just cranking it out, and it was kind of usually my process is you sit down 1,000 times and write a little bit, but I was able to put in some marathon sessions, and the end result was um, there used to be a reviewer on YouTube called Well Red Beard, and I think he kind of quit the business, but he would do a roundup at the end of the year of his favorite horror novels, and Dead Woman Scorned was number one of 2020. So I was pretty proud of that. I even put it on the cover, and it's just that was a feather in my cap. So I think um, that the second book is higher rated than the first one, even though the first one is still my favorite one, just because of the premise. And yeah, it's got higher ratings on Goodreads than the first book.
Yes, and according to Sally, fantastic sequel. So what elements that you put in the story to make more fantastic than the first one?
I think what people liked was in the first book, Mildred is a ghost, a mystery, and her character isn't really that developed. It's more about Tim and Holly who are trying to figure out who she is. And in the second book, we get to develop Mildred as a character and realize what made her angry, and why she is the way she is, and why she is who she is. There's a little bit of a twist that I haven't uh, explained, and I don't want to spoil anything. Um, so I think that the character development um, was the thing that won people over. It kind of taught me a lesson that it's not all about making a scene scary. You have to have characters. um, it really helps to develop the characters as much as possible, make them um, three-dimensional, and even though she's angry and evil, you kind of see why she came to be that way.
Yes, and according to Darlene, the passion of a dead man was well worth the wait. Oh, his writing draws you in, captivates your attention, making it difficult to put down. Your readers glued to each chapter by chapter. How did you do that?
Well, I like to keep my chapters short. Um, it's not something I, intentionally set out to do, but it works out that way because I make a pretty detailed um, outline first, and then I'll take those things one by one, those little bullet points one by one, and I'll say, okay, now I need to write about this, and I'll write all I can about that, and kind of, you know, exhaust it and maybe leave it so that you want to turn the page. So I think by keeping it small and incremental, and not having to worry about knowing where I'm going because I already have an outline, I can concentrate on the chapters individually and not ramble on and worry about editing it or changing everything later. I kind of I know where I'm going. How can I make it pop in and pop out, short and sweet, and and keep people turning the pages. I mean, I know that I read in bed a lot, and if I'm in the middle of a long chapter and my eyes are closing, I'm going to forget what I read, or have to reread it the next night. And I think this book or my writing style kind of eliminates that problem.
So, do you think on your second book you are more improved in terms of different aspect of your writing?
Absolutely, I think the more you do anything, the better you get. Um, I'm I didn't have an editor. My first editor was for the fourth book, and it's amazing. Like just punctuation that I would use. I used a lot of ellipses and double dashes instead of m dashes, and not formatting the paragraphs correctly, and just so many things. I can't even begin to. Even though I use the software Grammarly, it's still you need that human touch to get in there. So I've gone back into the first three books and given them a once over, but they could, they're still unpolished, but they're raw and in a good way too. I think that nobody's said that they're hard to get through or anything like that. It's just that um, the more you do it, the better you get.
Yes. The more you practice, the more you get
Mhm.
better. I think so.
You can't help but get better. You notice yourself getting better, and it's a good thing.
Yes. And your readers observe that on the second book, you gave highlight to Mildred in terms of everything. They sympathize to Mildred now because they learn something about her. So, what are the elements that you put to make Mildred the highlight of the second book?
All right. Well, I don't think it's a spoiler to say that Mildred, in the present day, as you're reading the book, is dead. The name of the book is Dead Woman Scorned. And so obviously she's dead and she's angry. Um, what the book does is goes back in time to when she's a child and all the things that she went through to get to the point where she's an angry dead person. So you get to know her from a little girl to a dead woman, and you understand her better. She's not just a ghost in the hallway or somebody staring at you from across the field. You understand where she's coming from. You don't love her, but you get it. You understand. She's I want to say she's human, but she's dead. She's a dead human.
Yes. So, for those two books that come out, which books did you learn a lot?
Well, I started from zero with the first book, and I made more mistakes with the first book. I also corrected a lot of them. I went back in and edited them as I heard things, So there were, if you buy the audiobook, it does not match the print book today. It's, there. I learned a ton with the first book, more about like I got way into the setting. I mean, the setting is a piece of property that I lived on as a kid. So it's a nice piece of property, and it was very vivid in my brain. Like it had, first of all, it's an old farmhouse with a huge barn with bats flying around in the ceiling. Like a high, very high ceiling, and you could see them all hours of the day. During the warmer months. And then it had a pond, in the front yard. After, first of all, like there's a front yard and a driveway, and then a meadow. And the first thing in the meadow was a pond. And to the left of the meadow was the forest. And if you walked into the forest, you're, just cruising through the trees, and all of a sudden there was a grove, like an overgrown tree farm, where all of a sudden you're in the middle of a hallway of trees and it's kind of dark in there. Like it would blot out the sun. So it's kind of like, picture the hallways of the hotel in The Shining, except it's trees. It's eerie, it's creepy, and it was eerie and creepy to be there as a kid. And I got to roam those hallways. Um, and when you're there alone, it puts like a knot in your stomach. It's too quiet. Like I said, it's a little bit dark, and it's a great setting for some creepy stuff to happen. So, I didn't make this property up in my head, and I got a little too descriptive in the first book, and as soon as I heard that, I went back in and chopped some things up. But like I said, I was more about, hey, I need to reach this word count. So I would say I learned more. Um, I learned the first things and the basics from the first book. And then as far as like character development, I probably learned more about that in the second book.
So, according to one feedback, story changes dramatically in book two. What are the changes that you did in the story?
Well, in the first book, it's a guy. Basically, it's Tim, and he does have a girlfriend named Holly, and he's got the two daughters from his first marriage, from his marriage, excuse me. And it's about him, and oh my God, there's a crazy lady in my house trying to get me, and trying to get my girls, and I can't tell the girls, and I'll give you one example. Like he wakes up early. He after a sleepless night, the girls are across the hallway, and he looks in on them. They're still sleeping. He's like, "Thank God I made it through the night." He goes downstairs. He starts making breakfast, and the girls come running downstairs eventually, and they're dressed in nightgowns that they didn't have on when they went to bed. So he knows that Mildred did it, but the girls think he did it. So he's living. This is the essence of book one. He's he's scared to death. He's got to hide it. And in the second book, we get to see it from the other angle. We get to see why Mildred is, like, as I said, why she's angry and who she is. So that's the big change. It's more about Mildred, and then after we get to know Mildred, the book ends with Mildred versus Tim.
Wow, sounds interesting. So, before we go on, Mr. Clark, I want to shout out to the people listening in Denmark. Thank you so much for supporting this podcast. In a capital region, I got 57%. North Denmark at 20%.
Nice.
South, yes, thank you so much. South Denmark at 16%. Zealand at 6%. And Central Jutland at 1%. Thank you so much for supporting this podcast. So, Mr. Michael, the dead woman is corn. What is the best highlight?
Haha, you want me to give away the best part of the book?
Yes.
Oh boy.
Without
Uh,
spoiler alert, okay?
hmm. Phew. Yeah, I don't know. Like, I don't think I can. I try to fill the book with good moments, keep you going. Um, but no, I'm not gonna give you one moment. I'm just gonna say that enjoy Mildred. You're gonna like the backstory, and I don't really like stories that jump back and forth in time. I try to keep that as simple as possible, and I believe I did.
So, how many chapters are there in Dead Woman's Corn?
193.
Wow.
Yeah. And that's in a 305-page book. So you can tell these chapters are short and sweet, and they keep you jumping.
So, which chapters you enjoyed the most?
I wasn't ready for this question. God, I don't know. I mean, it's been a while, and it's goes in this particular book. Um, I'd have to talk about characters we haven't talked about so far. Um, but let's just say there's some deaths, and there's more than one, and it's one of those.
Okay,
Yeah,
definitely, definitely. So, which chapter did you have difficulty of writing with?
I think the hardest part is the outline, and sometimes it takes me months to get through the outline. And I walk my dog in the woods every day. You know, sometimes my wife is there, and sometimes she's not. And when she's not, I'm often like working out the details in my head. And sometimes you run into a problem where, oh, that couldn't happen then. You're going to have to think your way around that. And that's where I run into my thing, my problems. And because when the outline is done, you sit down and I can relax and just work on the prose part of it, the words and the sentences and the characters and that kind of a thing. Um, I don't know how people do it when they're like pantsing it and going from figuring it out as they go. I just don't know how they do that. So none of the chapters are hard when you have an outline.
Yes, some of authors that I interviewed, according to Mr. Steve Strad, I asked him, and he said, I just go to my computer and just type. So some writers work that way for them, and
Hmm.
some don't,
I think
right? Just
most do actually. I think most, and I know Steve Stredd too. He's a good guy, and I've read his books. But yeah, I think most of them, like they say, are you an architect or a gardener? And I think I'd be an architect, and Steve would be a gardener. He just lets it grow as he's going, and me, I have to plan it out.
yes, that's true. And I asked him, do you do that in the future to plan your writing? He said no. I said I cannot do that.
Yeah, I envy that. I envy that.
All the three books, I observed that on the second book, you put the prologue. Why is that?
I think I'm setting up another character here. Hmm. Yeah, yeah. There's a character that's introduced in the second book that plays a major role in the third book, and I may write a book about him someday. In fact, I think I will. But his name is Andrew, and he has a backstory of his own, where he was the black sheep of the family. He was a problem child. His family owned um, a funeral home, and the plan was he has a sister that the two kids would inherit the funeral home, and once the parents retired. But something happens where the parents die in a car accident, and then Andrew, who never really wanted to work for the funeral home, he hated the business. He was afraid of taking care of dead bodies and so forth. Um, and he also has a drug problem. He went to college and was kicked out of college for drugs, so he's got kind of a substance abuse problem. And one day he gets in with some bad people, and the long and short of it is his sister is killed. So he's alone. He's got the funeral home. He'd love to sell it, but the parents, who were already angry with him for uh, getting kicked out of college and being the black sheep of the family, set it up through an uncle that he can't sell it. He can't sell the funeral home. And on top of that, his mother comes back from the grave to haunt him because he got the sister killed. So she puts him through some hell, and she lives to punish him and also keep him alive. So if he gets into trouble, she can revive him, and she can also hurt him. And he is sent to Sanborn, New Hampshire, where the Patience of a Dead Man takes place, to help Tim with his Mildred problem.
Wow. Very well said, Mr. Clark.
Thank you.
So, if this trilogy become a motion picture or a series, what do you think will be a trademark that you're gonna say your piece of work?
Oh, the trademark. Well, I think that um, Mildred, like I said, she'd be a good character. I think that to put her in three movies, people would embrace her as a villain, like they do, Freddy Krueger or something. And I don't think that she is as campy as Freddy Krueger. She won't be as overblown as Michael Myers. I mean, they made so many movies about Halloween movies that sometimes they don't even get the mask right. Jason also had over 10 movies, whatever that number is. But this would be a horror franchise that is scary, like The Sixth Sense, and it won't have a lot of blood. Um, it's not a slasher. It's just a moody, creepy, scary ghost story. And as I may have said in the last week, Mildred is covered in flies. So I think that flies would be on the poster.
Ah, that sounds interesting. And I think that's why the Sixth Sense become blockbuster because phenomenal because the way the trademark Sixth Sense is different from other horror movie, don't you think?
I do. And I also, one thing that I strive for is, like, horror is misunderstood, like, oh, I don't like horror, right? But The Sixth Sense, I don't even know if you call it a horror movie.
Yes.
But to me, it has perhaps the scariest moment in any movie, and that's when the little girl is in the tent. Like, I just
Yes.
didn't know what was going to happen, you know? And just that scene is, I love it. And it's, if you call it a horror movie, then it crossed into the mainstream. if you don't call it a horror movie, then it's a mainstream movie that scares the hell out of you. So I don't really know what you call that. I also don't know if you call The Silence of the Lambs a horror movie. You could call that true crime. I mean, it's basically a serial killer, you know, but he's scary. And,
Yes,
and that won an Oscar. So that's the kind of movie I want to make. I don't want Mildred to be funny or cheesy or bloody. I want her to be a real scary character and as real as you and me. Not not
yes,
not like a cartoon character.
definitely. And Silence of the Lambs is the most awarded movie of all time, according to the Oscars.
You mean most awarded movie or horror movie?
I think in the same genre. It's
Oh
like
wow.
best movie, best director, best screenplay. I think he has the number one list in the Oscar. Got all those awards.
Wow, I didn't know that. Well, that
Yes,
that deserves it. I just in general I don't really like Oscar movies, and they're a little too artsy, and um, a lot of them end where in the middle of nothing. Like it's this character driven story that really doesn't have a story structure. You know, I think about what was the name of that? Manchester by the Sea. It's just it's a couple characters arguing, and then you know, all of a sudden the credits are rolling up the screen. I'm like, that's the end. They're walking down the street. I mean, nothing happened. So I loved it when The Silence of the Lambs won Best Picture because it was the best picture and it also had a beginning, a middle, and an end, and the characters were awesome.
definitely indeed. So, what do you think? The book one and the book two of the Patience of a Dead Man, or what are the flaws?
The flaws. Well, I think there's a few scenes. I've had people get back to me where um, they're like, "What is this?" It's a ghost and a human being trying to communicate, and I was trying to think of a way to do that, and because there's got to be like laws of physics that come into play, like can a ghost grab a pen, and write, or and if he can write, why can't he just talk? And so as time goes by, maybe I could have done that in a dream sequence. The ghost visits him in a dream, um, and he's able to write. He's able to pick up a pen or something. So there's a couple little things like that, but as I said before, I don't sit down to write unless I'm happy with the outline. So I'm not going to say that there's any critical flaws. There's just some things that could be tweaked if I were to ever have the time to sit down and give it another pass.
Yes, very well said, Mr. Clark. So before we go on, I'm inviting you to listen to my other podcast, Food 101, or a third season with Chef Alessandro, one of the executive chefs in one of the five-star hotel in downtown Toronto. So uh, please do listen to my latest episode with Miss Ali Wing, the CEO of Ubli. It's a breakthrough that we need to learn. We need to spread all over the world because it helps us to eradicate obesity and, of course, diabetes. So please do
Yeah.
check out because nowadays, Mr. Obesity and diabetes is everywhere, and this breakthrough product is something else that we need to support. So please do listen. Food 101.
Food 101.
Yes, Mr. Clark. Because Mr. Steve Stred will be my probably we're gonna talk all of the books that he had. I think he's have 19 books to discuss. So
Wow.
what? can you say about Mr. Steve Strad?
Well, I can say that he is a great supporter of the horror community. Um, he read my book, like he can read so fast. My new book, Hell on High. He read that. He has a little blog post, three questions with Steve Stred, and I took part in that. Um, you can see that on my website on the blog page. My website is michaelclarkbooks.com, and I posted the Steve Stred thing on that page. And he is just quick to read people's books, review them. We all want reviews, and not to mention, like he's got 19 books, and I've read one of them, I believe, and it was very good. I'm just buried in books, and I will get back to him. But I feel like I owe him, some time because he donates a lot of his time to not only me but other writers who need those reviews and need that attention. So I would just say thank you to Steve Stred, and read his books.
So, if you describe his writing, what is it?
The one I read. Do you know that Steve Stred was also a bobsledder?
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
No, we discussed this latest book, Chance the Soil. Yeah,
Oh,
yesterday. So that's the latest one, and the Mastodon is saying that I think that he's the best book ever.
oh, Ritual. Ritual. I read Ritual.
Okay, so how is it?
Father of Lies trilogy, book one. It was very good. I mean, I've got to get back in there, and like I said, I'm a slow reader. I'm not, I told you I read it before bed, and that's not a good habit. I need to set more time aside for reading, like just sitting down and reading in the middle of the day, because when you're at the end of the day, if you're laying down and you're tired, you know you you're up against the odds in getting anywhere in that book. And I'm not talking about Ritual because I did read that. And it's like I said, there's a cross on the cover, and it's about like a priest that's embroiled in all the controversies of recent years. He's evil and disgusting, and they're it turns into like a worship, a demon worshiping kind of a thing. I read it, I don't know, maybe 2 years ago.
So do you have the same writing with Mr. Steve?
Well, I think we all have different styles, and I don't write about demons, not because of superstition or anything. I find ghosts and witches a little bit more interesting, and some people like to write about serial killers, and some people don't like to write about serial killers. So everybody chooses a different subgenre, and and as you said, he sits down and writes, and I don't. So we both write horror, but try us both out, I would say. Like everybody likes something different.
Yes, in different way. But both of you have phenomenal outcome, right? Because your readers love it.
I'm trying.
What is your short-term and long-term goal in writing?
Short-term goal is to break through to the next level, meaning like there are several levels to success. Um, Started out self-publishing. Last book, Hell on High, went through a publisher, had an editor. I'm learning what it's like to work with a publisher and an editor and that kind of thing. And now we're running into a bit of a snag with bookstores. Like the Patience of a Dead Man was Amazon only. And I'm like, well, you can't really talk to Amazon, but you can talk to bookstores. And when you go through a publisher, you're not just Amazon only, you're available everywhere. So, including Barnes and Noble, and indie bookstores can order your book too. But now I'm finding out that it's print on demand, and that's kind of a liability for some bookstores to order your book and or get it in the store because every shelf space is like real estate. There's only so much of it. So I would like to get into bookstores. I think I'm going to have to make friends with some of them. I'm in a few of them already, but some have said no too. It's not as easy as I thought it would be. I thought that if I mail them some, free swag for their customers, autographed book plates, bookmarks, a 6-inch by 9-inch print, that it might just be enough of an incentive for a customer to buy. But, I'm not a household name. So it's like, well, who cares to some? And some stores don't have a great horror section. So this is a long answer. I apologize, but I'd like to get into bookstores, and then, intermediate goal, be attractive to an agent. Like I don't want to beg an agent to represent me. I want to be sought after. So that would be an intermediate goal, and the ultimate long-term goal is to see The Patience of a Dead Man turned into 3 movies. So that may never
Yes,
happen.
yes. Be optimistic, Mr. Clark. Who knows? One of the director. I do interviewed director too on my movie 101, Mr. Patrick Moog. Probably is interested. Who knows?
Oh, well, drop my name.
Of course. Said, okay, Dead Woman scorned the patience of a dead man, book two. What else you can say about it?
I would say that it is a great bridge between the first book and the third book, and I think it's. Well, I don't think actually. I think book 3 is higher rated than book 2. They keep getting better, but people tend to like I did with Steve. I should have continued with his trilogy, but people are so busy with their other books and iPhones. They don't get to the third book often. And anyway, Patience of a Dead Man, book 2, The Dead Woman Scorned, is the biggest of the 3 books and the meatiest. It's got the most substance, character development, and it was best book of the year for 2020 by Well Red Beard.
In the future, do you think these three books will be available for audio?
They are available for audio.
Oh, they are already
Yep,
available.
they are on Audible, and I had a great narrator, and you would, if you're an audiobook person, you will enjoy.
Yes, definitely. Because I'm most of my books that I'm featuring here before my first season, second season, I do audiobook because while you doing something,
Yep.
it's multitasking.
Yeah, especially driving. If you're somebody that has to commute, why not listen to a book?
Yes, we're encouraging you to either listen to a podcast or audiobook, people.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
It's more productive than doing nothing. Your brain do something that to empower your brain.
Yeah, because there's nothing worse than traffic, like being stuck in traffic. But if your brain is engaged, there were times I used to have a commute, and if I had a good book, in the car, ready to go, sometimes I couldn't wait to drive.
Yes, you're looking forward to it.
Hmm.
Okay, Mr. Clark, can you please invite our listeners to buy all your books?
Yes, and if you like signed editions, I have those too. My website is michaelclarkbooks.com. I charge, like international, it gets expensive for shipping, but I only charge $5 shipping from my website, which means I pick up probably a buck of the shipping, and and I'll send you some swag too. And if you don't have any money and you don't want to buy anything, hit me up for some free stuff, and I'll send you, you know, a signed bookmark or you know, a book plate. Should you? That's a sticker that goes inside the book. It's autographed. Those are all free.
Yes, people, let's support Mr. Michael Clark because if you support him, more books to come.
That's right.
So, do you think the Patience of a Dead Man book become timeless novel?
Well, it all depends on attention, and I'd love to have them republished by somebody that when you self-publish, it's all you. You got to do all the writing and all the promoting and everything.
Yes,
And yeah, I'd love to have them redone. Um, I will look and listen to opportunities for that. I could only reach so many people, but I believe, based on Goodreads ratings, that they're as good as any. But if people don't know they exist, how can they become timeless? So that's the big question. Can I get them back out there and get the right person to or people to read it? Them.
definitely. So, do you think if you republish it, you really totally changes all the cover, the picture of the cover?
Well, that would depend on the publisher too. Like they have a budget. But have seen the covers now, or
I think you change it because the first book,
yeah, I
right?
did. It had red ink for some of it. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, I did. And then I did change it, and now they all have it's three pictures of my wife. I took the pictures and then sent them to like a cover artist, and he put flies on her neck and flies on her hands, and um, they're my pictures though.
That'd be awesome. So let's support Mr. Michael Clark because the Patience of a Deadman trilogy is one of a kind. So, Mr. Clark, thank you for your time.
Thank you, Daniel. I appreciate it.
Because this podcast, as I said, is created to empower indie writers, most especially indie writers. Okay, Mr. Clark, thank you so much. And more to come, people. See you soon.
Good night, Denmark.
Good night, Denmark. Thank you so much for support.